Hey guys, welcome back to Torchlight Infinite. I'm Andre, your community manager. It's been over 1 month since the Frozen Canvas season launch, and you guys might be wondering what took us so long to finally get around to doing a community Q&A or kind of a recap type of video. So basically the Frozen Canvas was a very special season. We totally overdid some of our core game mechanics, and especially coming over from Clockwork Ballet, the change was huge. Like, a lot of players felt that they need to learn the game all over again. It was in many ways a new game altogether. And when the season first went online, well, two things happened. One was that the learning curve was huge for many players, whether new or returning. And second, that we kind of overshot the difficulty for this season. So what happened with that? Every time we were preparing to do one of these videos, the development team thought, no, we actually need to put out a patch, we need to put out an update, we need to kind of redo that, and so on and so forth, and these things kind of went on back and forth, and yeah, every time we were planning to shoot one of these, the game was getting a massive patch, so we kind of had to put everything on hold. Now, the season has been out for 1 month. We feel like we worked out many of the kinks that came with the season launch, mostly in regards to overshooting the difficulty curve. As you guys might know, the Supreme Showdown has been nerfed several times so far. We are still getting a lot of questions regarding a potential future nerf, and we'll get to that very soon. But yeah, the difficulty curve has been adjusted, things should feel a lot smoother, and as players kind of grew with the season, feedback actually got a lot better. And we feel like we're at a point where we're quite satisfied with the Frozen Canvas. Of course, there's always a ton of room to improve. And yeah, today's video is all about going over community feedback, how you guys feel about this season, where it sits right now, the future direction of Torchlight Infinite, and hopefully a quick glimpse at what's coming in our future season. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Do you have any thoughts about the current state of Endgame Scaling? Mostly from time mark 8-0 onward. The DPS and defensive requirements jump massively each tier, and I'm left with the impression that only 1 or 2 builds can realistically farm profound time mark 8. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, this season was a new exploration essentially into how we would like to address Endgame Difficulty. We do want to make Endgame more expansive. We do want players to spend more time interacting with each of the in-game mechanics, exploring everything that the game has to offer, and really putting some thought into how they should squeeze out that last percentage of progress before they can start mapping a new tier, for example. Now, we did have some issues, of course. The main being the difficulty spike, which coupled with the very weak FE drops in time mark 7 and 8 were obviously a massive issue. Now, by the time that I'm recording this video, FE drops in both time mark 7 and early time mark 8 have been buffed since the season launch, so that should hopefully help players start fleshing out a build much sooner. But yeah, what you said is also an issue that we are aware, which is that the bump in difficulty at time mark 8 was a bit overwhelming for some players. So we do feel that the difficulty spike in time mark 8 might be a bit too much, and we might adjust it going forward. Next up, one of this season's hottest topics, the Supreme Showdown. How many people are expected to clear this event? Players are estimating their DPS to be 10 trillion and still having difficulty. Is this intended? Long story short, yes. The Supreme Showdown was designed to be inherently difficult. It was designed to be the hardest of the hard endgame content, and it was accordingly also designed to be very rewarding. Now, some issues came up, and I'm sure you guys are all very aware of them. As you can see, the completion rates by hero differ a lot. And this goes against our overall design philosophy because we do hope that, well, first, all heroes should be equally balanced, and secondly, we hope that players can be more creative and diverse in regards to their gameplay builds rather than just playing to the meta. So what we saw this season was that we kind of overtuned game balancing, and sadly some builds were hurt. So to answer your question, yes, it was designed to be hard, but it wasn't designed to be so hard for certain heroes, and that was an issue of balancing. The good news is that the tokens from the event are capped for each season. So basically, if you cannot complete the last floor of the Supreme Showdown this season, you're gonna keep all your tokens until the next season. So, you know, basically you just clear a few stages, easy peasy, and then you can exchange them for your pack spirit. Next up, a question about everyone's favorite commodity. Do you plan on making Flame Sand usable past early endgame? For example, there could be a conversion of so-and-so Flame Sand to so-and-so Bound Flame Elementium, so that it doesn't become a problem with inflation maybe. So this season you can expect the game economy to be pretty much locked, meaning we're not going to be making any adjustments to any commodities, how they function or anything like that. But we are aware of the issue of the oversupply with Flame Sand, and next season we're going to be doing something to address it. That does not mean it's going to be turning it into bound FE or not. At the moment, it's still in talks. Next up, a question coming from hardcore and solo self-found players. Can you look into giving extra functions for things like revive coins and tax vouchers? They are currently useless in hardcore and SSF respectively, so having something else to redeem for them would be nice. Yeah, so obviously we are aware that, you know, it doesn't really make sense to have revive vouchers in hardcore or to have tax vouchers in SSF. And it's been something on our mind, but we can't just change these two things independently, because the issue with hardcore and SSF as they stand right now is that they honestly need to have their whole events and rewards package revised. So that's something that's gonna need to be looked at as a whole in order to be implemented successfully. So it's something that's in our plans, but it's going to be a relatively large workload, so no ETA yet. Next up, a question about Moto. Are the Moto hero traits working as they should, or are they really bugged? If they are bugged, could you at least say that you are working on a fix? To be perfectly honest, I would like to say that they are bugged, because then we could actually easily fix it, but no, they are not bugged. Moto was just overtuned this season, and yeah, Moto is, as you guys can see from the Supreme Showdown rankings, well, he needs a rebalance, to say it nicely, and obviously that's something that's going to be coming in the next season. And now, the good news is that we do have players who have successfully completed the 20th stage of the Supreme Showdown with Moto. And the only advice that I can give is that, well, if the players still haven't, you know, unequipped their whole gear or just deleted their account altogether, go look at their builds, and from what I can remember, most players were actually using Bing's gear, you know, stuff that is basically not related to Moto's hero traits at all. So yeah, just ignore Moto's hero traits. It's obviously been overtuned. They're not bugged. He's just weak this season. We're sorry about it. We're gonna rebalance it as soon as possible. Next up, a question about difficulty and endgame. In the new season, Endgame feels like it caters only to the top 1%. People that don't play 5+ hours daily are starved from FE and good items. SSF is almost dead, leaderboards are almost empty on SSF. Can we count on reverting SS6 changes to drop rates, beacons, item drops, unlocking progression, atlas nodes, bonuses behind tasks, time-gated path of progression. For the most part, no, we are not planning to revert the changes that were implemented with the Frozen Canvas, because we do believe that it leads to a much more fleshed out, complete, mature, deep gameplay experience. Now, as you said, the endgame this season was very difficult. Are we planning to make it easier? No, not necessarily. But what we are gonna try to do is make the difficulty curve going basically from, the tutorial, so basically first getting into the Netherrealm, Time Arc 7, into Time Arc 8, and the early stages of Time Arc 8 feel a little bit smoother and easier, so that, players can start fleshing out their own build without as much resistance, basically. Next up, a question about development. In one of your latest dev blogs, you spoke about not making as many sweeping changes patch over patch. Does this mean you'll be taking a more similar approach to development of reworking systems, as they are needed in a manner comparable to Path of Exile, where reworks are only done in the case of complete failure of the mechanic? So I'm going to give you the quick answer right away, and yes, we are not going to be making as many changes to core gameplay mechanics, and we are going to be redirecting more of our efforts to new content. Now, the long answer is we are satisfied with the changes that the Frozen Canvas brought. Of course, as we've previously mentioned, the learning curve was huge for previous players, especially if you were coming from Clockwork Ballet or even some older seasons which were relatively simple and easy in comparison. It does feel like the game suddenly got a lot harder. Endgame got a lot more complex because it was asking of you to interact with more gameplay mechanics. It was asking of you to be more patient, to be more inquisitive even. But of course, we've got to be perfectly honest here. As many of you might have noticed, we had some relative success this season, whether it be on the game side of things, or even on social media. Like, I get creators all the time. I was just talking to Gooba a while back, and he was telling me, like, wow, this was the best season I've ever had on my channel. Like, this matched the Clockwork Ballet peak for like 2 months on end. So we do think that the changes, albeit painful during the season launch, were necessary, and they did set a more stable base for long-term development. So going back to your question, no, we're not going to be doing more of these massive revamps every single season, and more focus is going to be put on new content. As always, we have a question about the dummy. The dummy cap is 1 trillion, but you need closer to 15 to clear the endgame boss to get all the unlockables. I assume he's referring to the last stage of the Supreme Showdown. And then he goes on to ask if we have any plans to revise the dummy's damage cap and so on and so forth. Basically, no, we are not planning to revise the dummy's damage cap, but what we are probably gonna do is some sort of number crunch so that the actual damage required to clear endgame content doesn't need to be so extreme and doesn't need to be something that you can't even account for with the dummy. No plan changes to the dummy, maybe a number crunch. And yeah, that's just funny because I was watching an interview with Jonathan from PoE a few days back, and he was actually making a joke about massive numbers in action RPGs, and I was like, huh. Next up, a question about legacy items. Did you make sealed mana on legacy items on purpose, an item breaker with them having minus instead of a positive effect? No, obviously we do not intend to break legacy items, but due to the nature of their legacy status, they might have been in some ways forgotten during the development of this latest season, and they might need to be revisited eventually so that we can make them work better with the current meta. So no, we are not looking to break or nerf legacy items, legacy content. It was just something that inadvertently happened and might need to be revisited. Next up, someone who's really happy about Wilt. People are stacking thousands of stacks of Wilt via Spellburst plus Path of Flames, that is a tongue twister, and mobility slates, Lemao, LMAO. Do the devs like the burning servers calculating thousands of Wilt on hundreds of mobs per second? Great design, by the way. There's a lot to be unpacked here. So first of all, obviously, Wilt is very strong this season. It might need to be balanced a little bit, but also we do like leaving some creativity in the hands of players to do some crazier stuff. And regarding server load, well, that was actually an issue this season because we did have some builds that were actually lagging out entire servers. I'm not sure if you were just mentioning that as a joke or it was something that you experienced yourself, but yes, going forward we are going to have to address some builds that are actually putting extraneous excessive loads on our servers. But yeah, going back to the question, Wilt was a bit overpowered, we're aware of it, but we also want to leave players with some creativity. Next up, 2 questions regarding the Frozen Canvas seasonal mechanic. First up, would it be possible to adjust the drop rate of new support skills so that they can appear in all paints with higher level paints offering a higher chance? To be perfectly honest, no, not in our plans. Doesn't go with our current gameplay progression grand scheme of things, no. Additionally, many boards often don't align with the mixing objectives, as has been noted many times in the suggestion channels on Discord. Yeah, the mixing objectives themselves will be looked at, and either we cut some of them out or we simplify them. You know, especially as the mechanic eventually goes on to become a mainstay mechanic, a legacy mechanic. It's not going to be the current seasonal mechanic. It's probably better to be simplified a little bit to take out the more frustrating bits. So yeah, we'll be looking at mixing objectives. Next up, a question about quality of life on the permanent server. On the permanent server, we are able to use the latest seasonal hero, but unable to use the auto pack features. Since the permanent server is so connected to the seasonal server, would you consider allowing more quality of life to transfer over? And then we have another one also related to quality of life in the permanent server. And they're basically asking why can't they use the pack swapping feature in permanent servers. So of course, the seasonal server is where all the action happens and it is at the forefront of our development. So anytime we get a new feature, it is always going to come to the seasonal server first, but we will then try to expand it to all game modes. So yeah, we're gonna be slowly trying to roll out more quality of life updates to the permanent server. Next up, is the chest of folklores affected by the path of progression? No. Will the top-up bonuses be reset next year? Yes. Next up, a question about endgame mapping. Compared to Profan, I'm not convinced that deep space is any more rewarding at all. The beacons for deep space are about 4 to 5 times more expensive than regular Time Mark 8 beacons. I've been running deep space for an hour or two, and the drops feel like I'm in profound, but it's much harder. So basically the way that deep space was designed is that it's a high investment, high return game mode. So of course you can invest much more when you're juicing deep space maps, and that was kind of the assumption that was put behind it. So basically, if you want to have a good, rewarding, profitable deep space mapping strategy, you do need to put a certain investment into it. Now, another question is deep space profitable enough to be worth the hassle? That is a different question altogether, and that might be something that we need to discuss separately going forward. Next up, path of progression. Can you please make path of progression work retrospectively? I already checked prices 20 times or consumed FE in auction house, but since I was stuck on previous phases, I have to do it again. This is extremely bad design in my opinion. True. Yes, we are aware of it. It's really annoying, dude. It's happened to me a ton of times. It's, you know, just going back doing the same thing over and over again. We are aware of it. It's something that we're gonna try to improve. Hopefully by the next season, the path of progression should work very differently, and each time you unlock a new tier, anything that you already did before should just be ticked off automatically, and you don't have to like go price check 1 million times. You know what I mean. We are aware of it, sorry. Next up, a question about the Supreme Showdown. Will hero name cards carry over to the next season? I believe the majority of players won't be able to clear floor 20 due to how tanky the boss and even trillions take forever to kill him. So yes, the tokens from the Supreme Showdown are gonna be carried over to future seasons. So even if you can't clear stage 20 this season, they're gonna be carried over to the next season, and you can just clear a few more stages next season, and yeah, you got your pack. And hopefully next season, hero traits are gonna be balanced better. Players won't be needing to play to the meta as much, and we're gonna see a wider variety of builds and hero traits finishing the Supreme Showdown. Finally, something that has come up a lot in our questions. PoE 2, are we concerned about it? Do we think it's gonna take away a lot of our player base? Do you have any plans about it? Well, first of all, to be perfectly honest, we're excited about PoE 2. We're excited about early access. I'm gonna be checking it out as well. It's a good thing for the industry. Like, PoE has done tons for the ARPG genre as a whole. We're fans. We're excited for it. It's also doing so much for the genre that you kind of see this gravitational pull around the game that is even bringing a lot of casual or non-ARPG players to the genre, which we do think is a good thing. Now, regarding concerns, let's answer that twofold. So first of all, the Frozen Canvas has been out for a while, and we don't think that players have to stick on to each season forever. We do think that we just want to give players a good experience. We want players to come in fresh for a new season, check out what's new, have a really good time, have a really fun time. And when that is done, instead, they can move on, play the new season on any other ARPG, have fun. And then when we come back with a good product, a good season, then they can come back to Torchlight and have fun again. So, yeah. PoE 2 is scheduled for December 6th. By the time that comes around, we do think that players have had a lot of time with the Frozen Canvas. It's obviously gonna take people from us, and yeah, that is normal and part of the game. But yeah, to put it shortly, we're excited for it ourselves. A lot of us are fans of the game. We think it's good for the genre to have more attention, to have more people coming into the genre. And yeah, so that's all for today. Thank you for joining, and remember to claim one of these before they expire. And remember to stay tuned to our official socials for more news regarding Torchlight Infinite. We're gonna be posting more news about our upcoming season as soon as possible. That's all for today, and we'll catch you all in the next one.